Good evening, this is BrassTacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. The Freebies debate is really heating up. The Prime Minister flagged off what he called the Revdi culture, but now the Aam Aadmi Party, the Congress, other opposition parties are joining issue with the BJP. The government is seeking to draw a distinction between welfare and welfarism on the one side and freebies. Even the Supreme Court has waded in. They formed an expert committee with high-level representatives to weigh in on whether this practice of announcing freebies before elections is kosher. But where does the truth lie? And most importantly, the bottom line. Can India afford lakhs of crores in subsidies for things like free power and free health and free food and fertilizer subsidy? Because let's face it, it is only 10% of India, or less than 10% of India, that is tax-paying citizenry of this country. It is that 10% which is essentially footing the bill for the remaining 90%.
झूठ दिन पर दिन किस प्रकार से वो परोस रहे हैं, ये हम देख रहे हैं।
बार बार अपमानित कर रही है ये कह के तुमको मुफ्त की रेवड़ी अब आगे से नहीं देंगे।
The Freebies feud between the centre and the Aam Aadmi Party is intensifying with each passing day. The centre accused AAP convener Arvind Kejriwal of misrepresenting the debate around freebie announcements during elections.
It is the Modi government who is providing all kind of facilities for the last 8 years, from the MSPs to the free vaccines to the free food grains to the poor, from Ayushman Bharat to other schemes.
Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia claimed the centre writes off loans worth lakhs of crores for their friends and calls welfare measures undertaken by AAP as freebies.
आम जनता के लिए चलने वाली जन कल्याणकारी स्कीम्स को लेके उनको फ्री की रेवड़ी कह के आज उनका मजाक बनाने का एक नई राजनीति देखने को आ रही है। एक तरफ जनता के टैक्स के पैसे को दोस्तों के हजारों लाखों करोड़ों के लोन माफ करने पे, उनके टैक्स माफ करने पे खर्च किया जा रहा है, और दूसरी तरफ जनता के टैक्स के पैसे को करोड़ों लोगों के वेलफेयर पे खर्च किया जा रहा है।
Kejriwal has been calling for a referendum on spending taxpayers' money on healthcare and education.
रेफरेंडम ये कराया जाए, लोगों से पूछा जाए क्या सरकारी पैसा एक परिवार के लिए इस्तेमाल होना चाहिए। दूसरा मॉडल है, दूसरी विचारधारा है, क्या सरकारी पैसा कुछ चंद दोस्तों के लिए इस्तेमाल होना चाहिए, और तीसरा क्या सरकारी पैसा इस देश के आम लोगों को सुविधाएं देने के लिए, अच्छी शिक्षा, अच्छे स्कूल, अच्छे अस्पताल, अच्छी सड़कें बनाने के लिए इस्तेमाल होना चाहिए।
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman accused Kejriwal of giving a perverse twist to the debate on freebies. She said health and education have never been called freebies. So by classifying them as freebies, she claimed Kejriwal is trying to bring in a sense of worry and fear in the minds of the poor. Earlier this week, Prime Minister Modi said freebies will prevent the country from becoming self-reliant.
अगर राजनीति में ही स्वार्थ होगा तो कोई भी आकर पेट्रोल डीजल भी मुफ्त देने की घोषणा कर सकता है। ऐसे कदम हमारे बच्चों से उनका हक छीनेंगे, देश को आत्मनिर्भर बनने से रोकेंगे।
Amidst the back and forth, who is misleading the public on freebies?
All right, on the talking point this evening, the debate on freebies or the Revdi culture, as the Prime Minister put it. Shazia Elmi, BJP National Spokesperson, joining us. Adil Singh Boprai, Congress Spokesperson. Jasmine Shah, Aam Aadmi Party Spokesperson. Gaurav Chaudhary is Consulting Editor with Money Control. Professor Nilanjan Banik is Economist with the Mahindra University. And Kapil Sankla, Lawyer at the Supreme Court. Let me start with Jasmine Shah, because clearly the Prime Minister has raised this issue of the Revdi culture. But even before that, in June of this year, the Reserve Bank of India had flagged off the precarious state of finances of various states across the country, whereby it particularly flagged off the issue of freebies, particularly power subsidies and fertilizer subsidies. Has the time come, Jasmine, to stop particularly these non-merit subsidies, which the RBI has also flagged off and which the Prime Minister referred to?
Saka, you are right. There is a cause to worry about the finances of many states and most importantly, the Union of India. And the reason for that is not the welfare benefits that you give to the poorest of the poor. It is because how 10 lakh crores of NPAs have been written off. Written off. We're not talking about just declared NPAs. These are write-offs that have happened off the books of the public sector banks. Total 5 crore of corporate tax waivers have been given in the last 7 years. And you look at the way the debt of the union government has soared today to 140 lakh crore. It's historic. We've never been so debt-ridden. For the first time, the government of India is saying we don't have money to pay to the Jawans. That is why we'll bring Agnipath scheme. We don't have money for the 8th pay commission. We'll cut Manrega. We'll cut this scheme. We'll cut that scheme. You look at UP, 6 lakh crore of debt. You look at Gujarat, 3 lakh crore of debt. So clearly there is some cause of concern that money is being siphoned off to rich friends of BJP, whereas the poor people, in the name of Revdi, an attempt is being made to stop free schools, to stop free hospitals, to stop free basic amenities like water or electricity. And mind you, in Delhi, where we give all these benefits, we are running a surplus state. No RBI, no report of the government of India has ever called out Delhi for poor finances. So that is the reason as a country we have to worry that we should stop this culture of giving a free check to all the wealthy friends of the parties in
just
power
one
and
clarification.
call out the poor people for the
one clarification.
That are given
When you say 10 lakh crore write-off, a write-off is a technical write-off. It's not that money will not be recovered. Like, for example, in the case of Vijay Mallya.
No, but Dhaka,
one second. Just give me 30 seconds. Just give me 30 seconds.
I'm glad you pointed this out.
Just give me 30 seconds. I just want to explain this to our viewers in layman language. If, let's say, Mallya owed 10,000 crores to the government, it doesn't mean that the write-off of 10,000 crores has happened. They will attach his properties. They have attached, in the case of, let's say, Kingfisher, they've attached his aeroplanes. In the case of Nirav Modi, they have sold some of his jewelry. His properties have been attached. So recoveries will happen. A write-off does not mean it's an unrecoverable loan. Anyway, I just wanted that clarification.
Very quick response.
Okay, quickly, and then I want to go to Shazia.
Very quick response. Absolutely. And glad you pointed out the difference. Now look at the numbers, Zaka. RBI report says that the historic trend is that only 14% of the write-offs are ever recovered. So in that sense, practically there is no difference. And you tell me, you said, Mr. Mallya's this thing has been attached. Tell me total 10,300 willful defaulters are there. Tell me how many of them have been put behind jail. If these are not the friends of BJP, then you tell us how many of these 10,000 people you put behind jail.
Shazia Elmi, I want to talk about substance because clearly there seems to be a distinction that's being made from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman also clarifying yesterday that welfareism is one thing, but freebies are something else. Now the question that people are naturally asking is how are you making that distinction? For example, PM Kisan Nidhi, where you're paying 6,000 rupees to farmers every year. How is that different from what the Aam Aadmi Party is promising in Punjab, 1,000 rupees to all women? Or how are you drawing the distinction between Ujjwala? No, once again, how is Ujjwala, which is 2 cylinders to poor households, how is that different from free electricity? So how are you making this distinction? Yes, Shazia.
Okay, so I will, just as Nirmala ji pointed out, and as we understand it, us being a welfare state, it is the mandate of the government and the duty of the government to be responsible for the citizens, especially the marginalized ones, and therefore it...
Go on, I can hear you. Go on, Shazia, go on.
Pardon me. So it is a responsibility of the state to actually take care of its citizens, and which is exactly what every government does. But when we talk about freebies, we are talking also about 1,000 rupees being promised as a pre-election SOP. So a budgetary allocation differentiated from a pre-election SOP as politics of greed or a kind of a bribe which is being offered. 1,000 rupees to every woman, knowing very well that is untenable financially, knowing very well that the state of Punjab is facing acute financial distress, and still promising it only to make sure that you kind of incentivize people, not because of your policies or your plan, but because of some incentive of money. But because Mr. Jasmine does not understand the difference between NPAs and the entire conversation of freebies, and because Arvind Kejriwal is clearly trying to obfuscate the issue now that it's raging in the Supreme Court, I must tell you some figures. Public sector banks have recovered 6.41 lakh crores. 6.41, almost 6.5 lakh crores of rupees from NPAs under Modi government, and has written off loans from 2015 to now. But the NPA ratio has declined from 8% to 2%. And as you explain, and as FM has explained, and anybody who knows something basic about economics, and I'm sure Arvind Kejriwal does, but just says this to fool people, that when you write off a loan, as you explained, it is not that you are letting them off, and it is only our government that has tried to get all of these fugitives back, and we know exactly how successful we've been, and the entire country believes in the processes that are underway to get all of these.
I want to flag
back
one particular subsidy, which even the RBI in its report has flagged off as the biggest problem, which is electricity subsidy. So Adil Singh Boparai, please respond. As of May 31, 2022, state power distribution companies owed power generation companies at a consolidated level 1.01 lakh crores. State governments owe to power distribution companies 62,000 crores. And the total subsidy receivable by distribution companies is 76,000 crores. So in all, you're looking at 2.3 lakh crores of just electricity subsidy. This is clearly not sustainable.
Zaka, we in the Congress suspect that the BJP and their associates are laying the ground for the abolition of the MSP and the Right to Food Security Act. Let me make this very clear. This entire debate surrounding freebies, so-called freebies, is merely a precursor for the government to abolish MSP, given that the BJP is essentially a party of middle. Point number one. Point number two, and this was said on the floor of the House, and this is a startling fact which needs to be told to the people of this country. Out of the 7 lakh crore rupees of public money which was written off by public sector banks over the past 8 years, and you're right, there is a distinction between written off and whether it can be recovered or not. But however, the public sector banks have only been able to recover a meager 1,03,000 crore rupees out of this amount. Now, even if you are optimistic and bullish, at best you can recover about 20%. What about the rest? In 2019, the government of India reduced corporate tax. That was foregoing revenue to the tune of 1.45 lakh crore rupees annually. And please see the irony here. When you provide succor or when you provide impetus or capital to the corporates, the BJP labels that as incentives. And when you provide the same kind of handholdings to the vulnerable sections of society, the BJP calls this freebies. Isn't this hypocrisy? And what was misrepresentation, Zaka, when the BJP in 2014 in the run-up to the elections had promised the people of this country that we will give you 15 lakh rupees in every account. That was a misrepresentation. Please understand, legislations like the Manrega, legislations like the Right to Food Security Act have been the legislations which have ensured that people did not starve to death during the pandemic. It was the Right to Food Security Act which came to the rescue of 80 crore Indians during the pandemic, which provided them with free ration, which provided them with basic means of sustenance. The BJP, whether it was the repealed farm laws, whether it is their other legislations, the Electricity Act, etc., essentially wants to favor a handful of corporates, and that is the reason, Zaka. And the people of this country recognize this. There is growing income inequality.
One second. One of the things which has again been flagged in the RBI report, and I want to bring in Gaurav Chaudhary to weigh in on this. I mean, there is expenditure and there is revenue, right? State finances are so stressed, and the RBI report says, for example, in the state of Telangana, 63% 63% of their entire tax revenue is spent on freebies. In Punjab, it is 45%. So for every 100 rupees the state makes, it is spending 45 rupees just to manage the freebie bill, as it were. In the state of West Bengal, it's 24%. In the state of Madhya Pradesh, it's 30%. In Andhra Pradesh, again, it's 30%. It has got to a situation, Gaurav, do you reckon, where state finances simply cannot foot the bill? I mean, if they increase their revenues manifold, well and good. But with existing revenues, it has got to a situation where they cannot manage this kind of burgeoning and ballooning freebie bill.
No, absolutely not. You're absolutely right, Zaka. See, one of the problems has, as you said in your opening remarks, has got to do with non-merit subsidies, and we need to clearly distinguish between what is welfare entitlement and what is a freebie. Giving out farm loan waivers or farm income support scheme for farmers or the or marginalized communities, which the state governments and the center may identify depending on what they think is and based on merit. These are welfare entitlement, and it's nobody's case that in a nation of 1.4 billion people, there has to be a way where taxpayers' money or tax income from the government is actually transferred for support of those who live in the margins. That case is not the case we are arguing probably here. What we are arguing is there a case for freebies? And what are freebies? Freebies are essentially promissory notes that comes at the expense of taxpayers and follow an electoral calendar. They do not follow a socio-economic calendar. They do not follow a fiscal calendar. It makes the voting process a transactional activity. Apart from being a fiscal problem, there is also a moral hazard problem here that needs to be addressed. Now, you talked about the state of finances. Let me quote you some figures. Punjab, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Kerala, MP and West Bengal each have huge and massive unviable debts as a percentage of gross state domestic product. In the case of West Bengal and Andhra Pradesh, the debt is about a third of their gross state domestic product. In the case of Punjab, it is 50%. That is clearly unacceptable. Now, let's look at Bihar, for instance. 3/4, that is 75% of Bihar's income comes from devolution, which is essentially GST and other taxes and grants from the center. Only a fourth is earned by the state. In the case of Kerala, and there's something called a committed expenditure in public finance, which essentially includes salary, interest, pension, and administrative expenses. In the case of Kerala, committed expenditure is 40% of its income. In the case of Punjab spends about 50%, that is half of its earnings, on committed expenditure. These are extremely worrying numbers. Some states spend about 85% of their income on revenue expenditure. Now, what is revenue expenditure? Revenue expenditure is committed expenditure plus welfare spending. And Punjab spends only 6% of their entire income on capital expenditure. Public debt by itself or borrowing by itself is not just like in the case of households, even in public finances, borrowing by itself is not a bad idea. If you're spending that money or the money that you borrowed for creating assets, just like in the case of household, you spend money or you borrow money to buy a house or create an asset. In the case of public finance, you can borrow and create infrastructure, but that clearly is not happening. You are borrowing for revenue expenditure, which has no multiplier effects. That is where the problem is, Zaka.
Okay, let me also go to Professor Banik from the Mahindra University. Again, one of the things that's been flagged off by the Union Finance Ministry, it was there in a written reply in Parliament in the earlier session a few weeks ago. Between 2019 and 2021-22, the states of Andhra Pradesh, which borrowed 23,899 crores, Uttar Pradesh 17,000 crores, Punjab 2,879 crores and Madhya Pradesh 2,600 crores by mortgaging their assets. It's like what Gaurav was saying. You've put your house up on mortgage and borrowed money by mortgaging your assets. That is clearly an unsustainable economic model. And that is because states have been promising through their roof all kinds of subsidies, from food to fertilizer to electricity. Is it time to clean up finances both at the state and the center? Because this is unsustainable. Because like I said at the top of the show, you have less than 10% of Indians who pay income tax who are essentially footing the bill for the remaining 90%.
Yeah, so let me start with a basic difference between freebies and welfare state. The basic difference would be in terms of what we call positive externality. I'll take two examples after what I heard from previous two speakers. Let's talk about the agriculture. Now, in agriculture, there can be various type of intervention. One of the intervention which is more favorable among the politician has to do with the firm loan waiver. And what can be the other types of intervention? One can be, let's say, building more cold storage units, building more food processing units, or maybe building more e-market. Now, when we do some cost benefit analysis, this is something that we did for the government of Rajasthan and government of Andhra Pradesh. We found that in terms of benefit to the farmers, the maximum benefit is coming out of cold storage unit and building more food processing units. In fact, giving farm loan waiver does not make much sense because if you look into the distribution of farmers in India, around 83% of the farmers are marginal category farmers with less than 1.13 hectares of land holding size. Now, within this 83% of the farmers, you will find only 15% of the farmers are actually getting access to formal loan. So whenever the politicians are talking about the farm loan waiver, it is the big farmers who are actually getting the benefit, and the marginal and the medium farmers, they are not getting any benefit.
Okay.
So ultimately, out of $1 that the state is spending, in terms of return, the return is actually zero, whether because there is no welfare activity associated with that,
Correct.
because most of the time the farm loan waiver is actually going to the that section of the farmer population who does not need any subsidies. That is number 1 point. Number 2 point is we also heard about this corporate tax being brought down from 30% to 22%. Now for this, things can be both ways. Now, when I say both ways, the idea behind reducing the corporate tax is that once the corporate tax gets reduced, the industry or the corporate will be manufacturing more, and that will create more employment, and that will be good for the society. But indeed, if you talk to any industrialist, they will tell you that the expansion on their part is dependent upon how much demand is there in the society, or what is the perceived demand. So even if the corporate tax come down and there is a recession, I don't think the industry leader, they are going to expand on the capacity for the simple reason they are already working with excess capacity. So to come home to the point, basically we are talking about the welfare state investing in, let's say, school, colleges, hospitals, where there is some positive externality. For instance, if you're building more roads or connecting more ports and airports with the industry, the cost of doing business come down. Likewise, if you're having more tertiary education or primary education, then you are creating more skillful workers in the society with lesser crime, and the society
I want to go
in
across
the future.
to Kapil Sankla as well. Again, the Supreme Court is also now waded into this debate. Many would question, what is the role of the Supreme Court in this? Now, this is a matter of political discourse between political parties, clearly between the government and the opposition, as we're seeing in the public domain. And it is up to the people of India. If people of India don't like certain subsidies or don't like certain schemes, then they will not vote. Like, for example, the Aam Aadmi Party promised this 1,000 rupees for every woman in Punjab, and they promised the same thing in Uttarakhand. People of Punjab voted for them, but the people of Uttarakhand did not vote for them. So isn't this something that has to be settled politically? Why should this be settled by the top court of this country? What role does the Supreme Court have in deciding a question of freebies?
The short answer to this is that the mob is not always right. I mean, it is not necessary that if a political party or a political person has been elected, what he is trying to deliver may actually be good for the society at large. It could be for a particular vote bank. And that is why we talk about vote bank politics. And it is important that these issues come to the Honorable Supreme Court. It's decided before the Honorable Supreme Court so that the law can be settled, the precedents can be checked, and more importantly, there could be discourses and probably a dialogue that's been happening here. For example, Gaurav had some very valid points. The professor had some very valid points also. So the short question here is this, that the Honorable Supreme Court, and the test phrase was that the economy is losing money, but the people welfare has to be balanced. So what's basically the touchstone of every argument now, which is going to be, is people welfare. And that is exactly what Professor argued and Gaurav also argued. Now, how do you test that? The precedents that have been there with, all the way from 2013, Swami's judgment is this, that the timing has to be seen. That's one. The motive has to be seen, the reason behind those freebies, and of course the use of the freebies. What are those freebies for? As Professor said, that it has to be seen whether you're building cold storages. The other answer would be, are you giving free television? And that's the moot question that again would be decided by the Honorable Supreme Court. Now,
but I'm sorry, if I may interrupt. This is fascinating to me because, as I understand, there is a provision within the Model Code of Conduct whereby if the Election Commission feels or construes that something is a bribe to the voter, then it has powers to declare that null and void. For some reason, the Election Commission has chosen not to exercise those powers, and more importantly, I believe that the Election Commission, which the court had asked for a representative of the EC to be part of this empowered committee, has refused, has said that we don't want to be a part of this committee. So yeah.
The difficulty here is that the manifesto of the Election Commission is that it can keep a check on a political party before they're elected, not after they're elected. That's one. Secondly, whether this is a bribe or corrupt practices, unfortunately, was decided by the Honorable Supreme Court way back in 2013 in the Subramaniam Balaji matter, where the Honorable Supreme Court said, yes, this is something which is very serious and we have to look into it. But the freebies cannot be said to be corrupt practices or illegal in themselves. So therefore, the Election Commission itself is bound by one, a binding precedent, and secondly, it's manifesto as well that it cannot keep a check on a political party that's already elected.
So let me go back to the political spokespersons. I think the moot point, Jasmine, that Kapil and Gaurav and others are saying is, if you're going to make an announcement, like in this case, free power that you're promising in Gujarat, which will cost up to 8,700 crores, free power up to 300 units, or this 1,000 rupees to all women, which will cost about 20,000 crores, this you are announcing clearly with an eye on the upcoming elections. That is the problem area. You are essentially, without it construing in as many words, but effectively this is as good as a bribe to the voter.
It is very interesting and at the same time very dangerous what Mr. Kapil is saying, that a few urban elites sitting in their chambers will decide what is the compact between people and their elected representatives. It doesn't matter if the elected representatives want to give 5 lakh loan waivers or corporate tax cuts. That is a legitimate incentive, but no, people are not expected to directly negotiate the terms of what constitutes to them good governance from their elected representatives. Another thing you brought about Gujarat. Do you know the annual deficit, fiscal deficit of Gujarat government is 30,000 crores? Where is this deficit going? What are they using this extra money for? They're not giving free electricity. They're not giving free health and education at the primary, secondary and tertiary level in Gujarat. So the problem today in the country is that, yes, we are fiscally bankrupt, but that is because of poor governance, that's because of corruption, and that's because of giving undue corporate tax favors and putting money in the people of your in your rich friends' pockets.
Okay.
Not because a few subsidies, targeted subsidies in Delhi, it amounts to only 5 or 7% of our budget. But people have problem with that. That's only an eyewash, because all you want to do is actually defend corporate tax cuts. And mind you, there has been no new jobs that has been created ever since these corporate tax cuts have happened.
Okay.
We are seeing jobless growth in this nation.
So okay.
That is the question that we need to be asking.
Shazia, the question that people like Jasmine and the Aam Aadmi Party are asking is, in Delhi, for example, it has a budget surplus of 70,000 crore rupees. So why can't they subsidize electricity or subsidize healthcare for the poor?
No, but see, this is a problem. There are so many lies that are spoken all at once that you don't know which one you should be countering. So one at a time. So first of all, let me tell you, the Delhi Jal Board, Delhi Jal Nigam, was actually running on a profit during Sheila Dikshit's time. And actually, let me tell you, the outstanding losses of Delhi Jal Board are now 27,660 crores. The loan has not been repaid. There has been an inquiry by the CAG and the Delhi High Court. Let me finish. No, that is a lie. You can check. People can Google. 7 Delhi government companies have accumulated losses of 31,724 crores. And let me talk about Delhi Transport Corporation. We all know how Manish Sisodia went to Sweden to check on public transport. Let me tell you that the losses in DTC are 29,143 crores. As for the Delhi power companies, the losses are 2,561 crores. So actually Delhi is reeling. And if you look at Delhi Jal Nigam, it has never suffered a loss. But there is a loan which has been taken, which has not even been
Zaka,
shown.
I need to respond
and
to
in
this.
fact, the questions has been raised by BJP MLAs in the assembly. It is so widely
response,
covered. Zaka, you can just ask your research desk
Okay.
instead of believing Jasmine or me. But the fact of the matter is, so you don't have to trust either of us. And CAG has pointed to that, and the Delhi High Court has asked them to answer.
Okay.
So they have raised a loan.
Zaka, I need to give
not
a quick
shown
response.
It, and CAG has
These
asked
are
the
allegations.
question.
All right, quick response. 30 seconds. I'm also getting a piece of breaking
they're not
news. I need to go.
Every
They're not
Okay,
allegations,
every
they're
piece
fair
of
enough.
information is wrong because
So
the
Jasmine,
CAG
stop
has
lying.
declared, and you know
No,
the
no,
entire
lie,
country
stop
knows
lying.
it, that CAG has declared that Delhi government is a surplus government. All of these loans that you read, Shazia, these are not loans. These are grants given by Delhi government to these corporations from taxpayers' money after ensuring that we balance our budget. And
Okay.
why do you never talk about the loans that you have in Gujarat?
Okay,
and
I
Uttar Pradesh?
got to
You have
wrap
no
up.
answers
I'm
to
getting
that.
a piece of breaking news. Unfortunately, I have to
changing the
pull off.
goalposts.
I have to pull off
Again, you're running
from the political spokespersons. This piece of breaking news coming in from New York, where author Salman Rushdie has been attacked. This is in New York City. He was about to give a lecture this morning in New York time. And then we're given to understand that a news agency reporter who was a witness to this incident, he saw a man storm up the stage at the Chautauqua institution where Rushdie was due to give a lecture in New York this morning. He started punching and stabbing Rushdie as he was being introduced to the audience there. This is footage that's been put out by one of the news agencies. You can see Salman Rushdie on the stage. He then immediately collapsed, is what we're given to understand. He fell on the stage. Immediate medical treatment was given to him. The attacker was also surrounded by the law enforcement agencies, and he was surrounded and detained. Rushdie received first aid as well as medical treatment, and we're given to understand that he's been taken to hospital now, where he is receiving further treatment. So clearly, we don't know who this attacker is or what his motivations were, but this is what we know, that Salman Rushdie, award-winning author, novelist, and multiple-time Booker winner, someone who, of course, was the author behind the controversial Satanic Verses and many, many other novels and books. He was stabbed today in New York as he was about to deliver a lecture at a college in New York. Let me go across to Abhishek Jha, who tracks the MEA for us. Abhishek, what more details do we have about this attack that happened?
So, Zaka, clearly this is an incident which was clearly not being expected because the event was a gathering of people, more literally inclined people, because Salman Rushdie, a acclaimed author and novelist who is very celebrated for his writing in the past, was about to give a lecture. And in the middle of this event, a boy or a person storms into the stage and he tries to punch him, and apparently he has also stabbed him, because in the pictures and the footages that are coming out from the scene, we are seeing that he has fallen on the stage. But then we have also learned that he was provided first aid on the stage, and probably after that he walked off the stage with some assistance. And his current situation is not well known whether he has been admitted or how much of injury actually he has been victim of. He's 75 years old, so clearly the person who has attacked him is very young, and it looks like he's very robust. And the kind of attack, the visuals that we have had, we have shown to audience also, looks like he must have got seriously injured, but we are not sure about him. We know that Salman Rushdie has been on target of radical Islamists for very long after the publishing of his famous book, The Satanic Verses, in late 80s. In fact, the erstwhile Iranian supreme leader had also announced a bounty on his head of almost $3 million, which was later on, after many years, it was increased to some more than $3 million. And this actually forced Salman Rushdie to live a life of, in hiding also for a very long time. But
Actually, give me a
years now,
moment.
he's been
What we're seeing on the left of our screen is pictures of Rushdie being lifted by air ambulance. He was given first aid and immediate treatment at the institution itself, right on stage where he was stabbed. After which he was taken off stage onto this air emergency ambulance, and he's now been taken to hospital. So what you're seeing on the left is that picture of the air ambulance. On the right, of course, is the images of Rushdie being stabbed and pushed on stage at the Chautauqua institution where he was due to give a lecture this morning. Do we know, Abhishek, any details about who the attacker was or what his motivations were? As you said, Rushdie, of course, was a figure of hate, if you will, for radical Islamist organizations and radical Islamist outfits all around the world. So do we know if this person, the attacker, belonged to any such institution or was of that kind of a bent of mind or that predisposition, if you will? What do we know about the attacker or his motivations?
Zaka, it looks like the event has happened just maybe a couple of hours ago, and much of the detail, about the Rushdie's health, we saw the picture how he's being lifted by the air ambulance, the kind of injuries he has sustained, or what is his condition right now. That is also not very much clear. And same way, the person who is believed to be the attacker was apprehended immediately because it was a huge gathering. Amphitheater was immediately people were evacuated from the place. That person was apprehended. He's in the custody, and we can assume that there must be interrogation going on, and soon we'll be able to know what were the motives behind this attack, whether this attack was a result of an organized institution or it was just a lone wolf attack of some manic person going berserk and hitting on this celebrated novelist.
All right. The pictures that you're seeing on the left are Rushdie being carried on a stretcher into this air ambulance, and then he was airlifted from this educational institution to a hospital where he's currently receiving treatment. This happened about 30 minutes ago is what we're given to understand. There you can see people there of the institution and first responders carrying Salman Rushdie in that stretcher onto the air ambulance, and he's now been lifted by air, by that chopper, to a hospital where he will be receiving treatment. So this is what we know. He was due to give a lecture at the Chautauqua institution this morning. As he was being introduced on stage, a man walked up, stabbed Rushdie multiple times, pushed and shoved him. Rushdie immediately collapsed on stage. The attacker has been detained. He was immediately surrounded and pinned down, and of course he's now under detention. Police and law enforcement agencies are questioning him, figuring out who he is and what his motivations are. Meanwhile, Rushdie was given immediate first aid and first-hand treatment, after which he's now been stretchered out to that air ambulance, and he's been taken away to a hospital where he will receive treatment very soon. So that's the latest that we have on the story. We'll take a break on those pictures, but when we come back, we'll have BrassTacks Superfast as well as some other breaking stories as well.